What's going on, everybody? We are live. Welcome to another episode of the Knicks Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Troy, and if you're not subscribed already, I don't know what you're doing. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn notifications on as well, too, so you don't miss the lives like this or any of the new episodes. Now, we're in a really great season right now. We're here to talk about Knicks, but really trade season is upon us. And when you're thinking about trades and trade season, I was thinking about who's the best person to talk about trades with. Well, let's talk about maybe somebody who's been dropping maybe a couple of articles each and every week about trades. And that's really senior NBA reporter Jake Fischer. But not only that, guys, did you also know he's on the Ball Don't Lie podcast as well? And he's the author of the book. You can see it on screen right now, Built to Lose, How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. It's on sale right now on Amazon. You can get it for a low price. And again, everything helps. It's the great, the amazing, an honor for me as well, too. Jake Fischer. Jake, what's going on, man? Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you so much, man. That was a very kind intro. I appreciate you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Like I said before, man, I'm fanning a little bit because I've been following, and again, if anybody's been watching, you know I've been dropping video after video after video about what Jake Fischer has been releasing about the NBA, the trades, and the trade season. And I don't want to keep you because I know we're limited with time, and we have a lot to discuss regarding the Knicks. And really, the first topic that everybody's thinking about is the Knicks' next trade target this season. Really, who
Yeah.
is that really going to be? Because there's a lot of names out there, right? And shout out to you. You actually did a report on it. Your article for it was called How the OG Anunoby Deal Has Shaped the NBA Trade Market. Please read that article. The link's going to be in the description. In that article, you mentioned that New York is surely having plans to keep searching for upgrades around blooming all-star Jalen Brunson. You also mentioned that they had been calling about replacement backup bigs before they got Precious Achiuwa. And now
Mm.
NBA rival executives believe that the Knicks are now exploring more backcourt options. So really, I guess the question is, for now with the New York Knicks, where do they stand on the trade market and who is their next trade target?
No, I think the Knicks fall into the same category as other top tier playoff teams right now, which I don't think anyone looks at New York as, along the lines of Boston. But look, 5-0 after the OG Anunoby trade, they're right in stride to be that 4 seed that they were, in that first year with Tom Thibodeau. And when you're in that mold and you have your top guys, you're definitely looking at ancillary like extra pieces to add to what you have. So I think whether it is Boston or you look at Philly, like a lot of these teams are looking for one more point guard or another backup big. I do think New York still has the potential to look in the front court market. Daniel Gafford was a name I wrote about a little while back. Wendell Carter is someone that people keep talking about in Orlando. I'm not necessarily sure that he's on the Knicks list, but I also like I wrote in that article you mentioned, it does seem like the priority right now is another guard, is someone that could help supplant JB when he goes to the bench. I know they want to give Deuce McBride his run here,
Right.
and it does seem like I haven't checked his production, I'm not going to lie, but at least
He's
anecdotally, it seems like he has performed pretty solidly in that limited action. But
yeah,
you also have to consider that Jalen Brunson's playing 44 minutes a game in the playoffs,
right.
maybe even more. Maybe he's playing all 48. So I'm not so certain that the Knicks are going to be out there, splurging 2 second-round picks to go and then stuff to go get Dejounte Murray. Like maybe someone more of the Malcolm Brogdon, Tyus Jones, Alec Burks, like just one pick type of deal. I think that to me right now, and it's still early. We're still a month away from the deadline, but my current read on things, I think that's the more likely outcome, more of a stopgap, a lower cost addition than trying to go make a huge move right now, unless someone that they really do believe in is a huge fit for the future, like an OG Anunoby becomes available between now and then. Right now, I don't see that player, entering the market at this stage.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that because, a lot of people, we obviously saw Malcolm Brogdon yesterday, and I think Knicks fans, after the Knicks blew out the Blazers, shout out to the Knicks 5-0 after the OG Anunoby trade. Leon Rose, we see you over there. With with all of those great things happening right now, you would anticipate the Knicks are going to make another move. You did mention the fact that they've been potentially can look at some of these role players or can help them with depth, right? Malcolm Brogdon, for instance, maybe you can come off the bench to allow you to replace Emmanuel quickly, for instance, with the sixth man of the year for last year, right? So that potentially could be a move that can help them kind of get better than where they are right now. But a lot of reports have been out there. Tim Bonson's for ESPN as well too had reported that the Knicks are looking for a starter caliber type of guard, a star. And I guess what you're saying is that if they can't find that level of star right now, they would go to the next tier, would it be a Brogdon or one of those type of players. Would I be right with assuming that?
Exactly. That's right. I don't know if that type of player is going to be there. Like if Dejounte Murray is the best, quote unquote, star level point guard on the table, you'd have to consider the fact that he'd be leaving a situation in Atlanta that is quite similar to what he'd be joining in New York, right? There's a very ball dominant lead all-star guard who is on the smaller side of things and is not necessarily a positive or a real game changer on the defensive side of the ball. I think Jalen Brunson fights and competes, and I have no qualms about what he does on that side of the floor. But to me, the thinking that you're going to take Dejounte from a situation in Atlanta that's very similar with what he's with next to Trae Young, and just snap your fingers and it's going to be a better fit in New York. I mean, New York's definitely in the running for him. I think they're definitely interested in Dejounte. I just don't know if they're going to be as motivated to acquire him as other teams that have an actual hole in their backcourt, whereas the Knicks are just trying to add around Brunson as opposed to like welcoming Dejounte Murray in as their point guard.
It's funny. The next topic obviously was going to be Dejounte because, as you mentioned, in terms of possible candidates for a trade right now, he's the one that fits the bill in terms of available star. Even though he's not the level of star maybe as a Donovan Mitchell, he doesn't have that type of cachet, right? But you hear if you don't hear Donovan Mitchell, you hear Dejounte Murray. You still think about that defense. You think about he's still an all-star as well too. And you did write about it as well. I know you actually mentioned it, that you said the Knicks aren't done, to quote you. They saved all their first-round picks. They have Evan Fournier stock. It's true. They're going to be involved in the Dejounte Murray talks. But then, as you mentioned, Jalen Brunson is probably playing 44 minutes at minimum. So if you're getting somebody else in there with him, do you really need somebody at Dejounte Murray's caliber to be in there with Brunson? Or do you need somebody who can help just run the offense a little bit to stabilize it while Brunson gets a rest, which it does seem like that's what Thibodeau's looking to do.
For sure. Let's say you do go out and get Dejounte and it looks great in the regular season and he's playing 15 minutes a night running the floor by himself when Jalen's not there, and then they share some time together and it looks good, just like how everything was working with Quickly. And then you get to the playoffs and all of a sudden he's in that same role where he's only really playing certain spots. I don't think that's a situation where, and this is just me piecing together what I know. To me, it doesn't seem like a situation that Dejounte would be super gung-ho about for the long term. And I would think that would give a frugal front office that New York has been. They've been patient. They've been holding their first round capital for the right move at the right time. I don't know if that applies to someone that you would potentially have concerns about him being dissatisfied with how much is available to him, especially with, Dante DiVincenzo has been phenomenal with the starting lineup, and Josh Hart comes off the bench and isn't exactly like a ball handler, but if you watch the Knicks night in, night out, which I know your listeners do, which I haven't been in the Garden this week, but I'm there pretty much every week.
Right.
Like, he's coming off the bench, and him and Julius Randle are pretty much ripping down every defensive rebound and taking it off in transition. Like, there isn't really like a true point guard hole in that bench. Like, there is a need and a desire, I think, for like that IQ caliber guy to slow things down and set the table. But I don't think that if you watch the Knicks, I don't think there's like a Dejounte Murray sized hole, if that makes sense. This is just my opinion mixed with my intel.
That's actually the best way to put it. I love the way you put that because, when you're looking at this team, again, we are 5-0. We were undefeated with OG Anunoby. The team is rocking. They look well. I mean, if you think bringing out somebody like Dejounte Murray's caliber could mess with the chemistry, maybe to your point, you don't want to do that. You want to have to maybe add something to your bench, which you do need to shore up, get better with, maybe add another guard to your point that can help Jalen get those rest minutes. So that is a good point. And again, it does bring me to the next topic here. Then you also mentioned in that same article some names to keep watch of, and shout out to the Strickland. The live viewers are actually taking a look at the tweet right now. New York surely has plans to keep searching for upgrades. You mentioned Tom Thibodeau favorite Alec Burke, and then obviously Malcolm Brogdon as well too. I was also curious if you think about anybody in Detroit, because I believe with Ian Bagley on the Putback, that show, you guys are talking about Bojan Bogdanovic, Killian Hayes, DeLon Wright. So a couple of different names. Where do you think the Knicks stand right now with one of those people? Is there any one of those guys right now that they're leaning more toward, or do you not know at this point in regards to where they are on at least one of those type of bench pieces?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a sense on any hierarchy or ranking or anything like that. I think what this this will come down to this situation, and what most teams who are looking firmly at being buyers, they're canvassing the league, they're having meetings. Like, a lot of teams have their scouting personnel departments come for a meeting every 2 weeks, every week, every Friday, some stuff like that, and they evaluate. All right, this guy at this contract value, what he brings, blah blah blah, compared to what the asking price for that team is, and then maybe there are certain players that teams would like above other players, but the price point to acquire them is different. So, for example, the price point to acquire DeLon Wright, for example, in Washington, a team that I've heard repeatedly is really looking to get back as much draft capital as they can for an objective rebuild that sent out Bradley Beal but didn't get a bona fide real first round pick. They got pick swaps from Phoenix, but they didn't get the typical, 4 unprotected picks that you saw Kevin Durant go for, even the 3 unprotected picks that Atlanta gave up for Dejounte 2 years ago. And I wonder where that. I mean, I know that the price point differential for how all these guys are going to be evaluated is going to end up changing things. Where some teams will come off their asking price. Some teams are saying, "Oh, we want a first round pick for this guy." Come February 8th, they'll do it for 2 seconds. And then I do wonder how those shifting valuations end up changing what a buyer like New York would be willing to do. Because would you rather, if there's a theoretical guy who's number 3 on your list, you can only get him for 2 seconds, and the other 2 guys, the team's asking for a first and more, you might have to settle for your third option sometimes. It's not the trade deadline is not exactly like we have a hole, you have a player, so let's just like make it happen. A lot of deals don't get done because that price point doesn't work out, as opposed to the draft. Like, there's 60 picks and a team has to pick one guy at every spot. You know
Right.
what I mean? So it's a lot easier sometimes to pinpoint, okay, this team wants a guard. They have this hierarchy of like these draft guys. So whoever's available, they're just going to take their best guy. Like, with the trade deadline, it takes 2 teams to agree on a price point, which I think changes a lot of teams. Like, I hear time and again, like, oh, we really wanted this guy, but Toronto would never come down, or
Right.
Charlotte, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know right now where that is. I think it'll come clear as we get there. But again, to wrap this whole ramble up,
Yeah.
it will probably be determined more by what the other team's asking prices are compared to how the New York's prioritizing things. Because this is a buyer's market right now. It's kind of advantageous to be a seller at this point in the NBA calendar.
And it's funny that we're talking about the New York Knicks moves, because I was reading. I do a lot of reading. I read your stuff. I read Bondi stuff. Excuse me, Bondi, Bagley, Cats,
You're up on
everybody
it, man.
basically, right? Yeah, I try to go through the whole gauntlet, right? One of the main things I've been reading though is about Randle trade discussions. Now this is from Sam Amico from Hoopswire, who had sources indicate more or less that he was discussing basically Randle. He was hearing more or less that Randle had been involved in some type of deals or contemplating some type of deals by the New York Knicks. They now intend to keep him this season, but they had some type of discussions about it. How true is that from your sources? Was that anything that you've heard that is legitimate, that the Knicks at some point this season had discussions about potentially trading Randle?
Nothing that's come across my radar of late. I mean, the last time I ever really heard significant Julius Randle trade stuff was 2 years ago, back when it seemed like before Sacramento decided to move Tyrese Halliburton, they were kind of calling around and seeing which of Tyrese or De'Aaron Fox had the most value. And I think when New York inquired about one of those 2 guys,
Mm-hmm.
that was the natural return, because the Kings were looking for a real all-star front court player to come back. And if you look at what Sabonis and Julius Randle were both at the times of their at that time at the times of their career, I think that was really the only real pathway for Sacramento to have felt comfortable engaging there at all. So that was the only real time I've heard like a definitive thing where New York has talked about moving Julius. Around the league, you hear rumors all the time like, oh, they'd love to get off of him, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. But I think a lot of that stuff, I mean, a lot of that stuff is just people doing the simple math of that he has a big contract and he had a bit of a down season at some point in that deal. That's really that. But for now, I mean, he's playing very, very well. The
Right.
efficiency seems like it's taking a massive spike forward, and things are rolling right now. I don't think Julius Randle is like locked in, cemented in stone as like the number two behind Jalen Brunson for the next decade. But right now, I don't have any real sense or pulse that he's someone that Knicks fans should be prepared to part with.
And I know we're a little bit off of time here, so I don't. If you have time for one more question, I just want to ask about
Yeah,
one more. If you have a little more
yeah,
time, awesome. So
yeah.
just the last question that we have here for me, anyways, is for Donovan Mitchell and the New York Knicks. Just because, again, this has just been I hear it every day. All my fans talk about it. They leave comments, and I could talk about Dejounte Murray till I'm blue in the face. The comments will
Mhm.
still be about Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
Thankfully, my guy Mark Stein kind of at least a little bit threw water on that when he reported that at least Donovan Mitchell was not going to be available, at least for the New York Knicks. We're not going to aggressively pursue him for this season. I don't know if that changes during the offseason or whatever the case may be, but what is your read on the Donovan Mitchell situation in Cleveland? And do you think the New York Knicks actively go after him?
Well, the Cavs have been very clear that they are not going to entertain Donovan Mitchell trades during this season. So I'm not prepared for him to be involved with New York or any team right now. I mean, something would dramatically have to change between now and the deadline, I think, for the Cavs to change their stance. He's going to be an expiring contract, basically, with the threat to decline his player option this summer once the calendar flips to 24-25. And that's, I think, a different situation. But for now, I don't expect Cleveland, let alone New York's own interest. I don't think the Cavs are going to entertain that really from any team. And also, to kind of mix my perspective with the information too, like I don't know if Donovan Mitchell's better than Jalen Brunson, and I don't know if he's necessarily worth the type of haul that the Knicks would have to give up at this point to go get him. So it'll be interesting to see if he ever does become available again and what those talks become
Mm-hmm.
because at the time when the Knicks were talking to Utah and all that stuff was being played out very publicly in the media, I don't think anyone was considering Jalen Brunson to be on the same level as Donovan. And that general calculus, I feel like, just from a logic standpoint, understanding how the league works, I think it has to be a different approach from the Knicks if they ever were to look at Donovan again. Seriously, being that Jalen Brunson is potentially maybe even better and on a very, very team friendly contract. And how much are you willing to give up to potentially disrupt what's going with him? Similar to how maybe Darius Garland's been kind of knocked off his upward trajectory once Donovan came into Cleveland. So those are going to be tough conversations. I think the Knicks are going to have internally if Donovan does reach the block again.
I think that that's the best answer for me because listen, I've been looking at this team. I like it. I would like a Donovan Mitchell and Brunson because I feel like even though it's undersized, the assist, the way Donovan can pull defenses, that could work. I think they would be elite offensively, defensively at times, depending on who they're playing. They would be a little bit undersized. I get that, but I think they would be great. But I also like the Murray pairing because he gives you size and he also gives you defense as well. But to your
Yeah.
point, if it's rocking and rolling right now, do you really want to throw a major stone in that and interrupt what's going on because it may not work? And then if it doesn't, you may have an asset that you have to flip later on that you may not get the same, return back for. So I can understand, the mindset behind that. You made a great point about Dejounte maybe not wanting to accept that role. I've never even considered that point. What if he comes here and doesn't want to be number two to Jalen Brunson, or maybe doesn't accept the role that Thibs puts him in? Because we know how Tom Thibodeau is. Not a lot of people like to buy into the role that he puts people into. So I think that's a good point to have. I don't want to keep you any longer. Chat, I know you guys are going off, but I can't keep him. He has a lot of other things to do. Jake, you gave us so much extra time. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So much insight. Remember, his book is on sale right now. Built to Lose: How the NBA's Tanking Era Changed the League Forever. Get that book. Support this man. Read his articles because I'm telling you, he is the guy that I go to for all of my information. Not only him, but some other NBA insiders as well too. But he's one of them among the first. So please follow him if you're not already doing so. You see his handle on the screen. Jake, I hope we can have you on the show again. But thank you so much again. It was an honor.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, man. See you. Thank you.